Welcome to The Debate. Today we're tackling a question that's really politically explosive, the profound constraints surrounding, highly sensitive military targets in these incredibly charged political scenarios.
It really is the ultimate test of red lines, isn't it? And the specific conundrum, the question we're addressing today, it's stark. It's very clear. Why won't NATO, or even Ukraine for that matter, dare to shoot down Putin's aircraft when he's on his way to meet Trump in Hungary?
Right. And I'll be arguing that the primary constraint here is immediate and, frankly, purely pragmatic. It's really about the operational and, you could say, existential risk to the alliance itself. And this is precisely because of the location, Hungary, a NATO member, and, of course, the high political visibility of this particular meeting. My position is fundamentally based on geopolitical self-preservation for the alliance.
And I suppose I come at it from a slightly different angle. While, yes, the immediate politics are certainly messy, I believe the core deterrent is rooted much deeper in long-term strategic stability. Taking such an action, it would inflict catastrophic damage on international norms and fundamentally alter the future conduct of this conflict. It really transcends those immediate geographic concerns. For me, this is about preserving the structural integrity of the global order, in a way.
The constraint, as I see it, is rooted in the sheer geopolitical necessity of preserving the Western alliance. Targeting that specific aircraft while it's traveling to meet a prominent Western political figure like Trump, and crucially, doing so within Hungary, a NATO member state, that would instantly drag the entire alliance into a direct kinetic conflict with Russia. It just shatters that established boundary of non-belligerency in one swift move.
Okay, that's certainly true regarding the potential political fallout. I see that. But let's maybe look at the underlying military calculation, the one that informs the strategic decision-making here. The deterrent, from my perspective, is really rooted in the unwritten laws of armed conflict. I mean, shooting down a head of state's aircraft, particularly when they're en route to what is, diplomatically speaking, a high-level meeting, well, that constitutes such a qualitative leap in aggression that, frankly, no major power seems willing to take it.
I absolutely understand the gravity of the normative argument. I do. But we really have to focus on the context specificity here. The risk of accidental or deliberate escalation right there, in the immediate vicinity of NATO territory, it's just unacceptable. Primarily because of the Article 5 risk, isn't it? You'd essentially be turning a proxy conflict into a hot war, literally within the alliance's borders, risking that Article 5 activation, which of course means every single NATO member is instantly pulled into the fight. The potential short-term gain of, stopping that meeting, it just isn't worth shattering NATO's very foundation.
The question posed uses the word dare, which kind of suggests fear is the driver. But I would frame it differently. I think it's strategic wisdom. If such an act were carried out, it would effectively hand Russia unparalleled justification for extreme retaliation, maybe not even military, perhaps against infrastructure or something else, completely removing the final guardrails, these sort of understood limits of the existing conflict framework. Now, that's a compelling argument you make regarding the location, Hungary. I get that. But have you considered the precedent? The precedent set by targeting a leader during transit that fundamentally changes the global rules of engagement forever, doesn't it? This restraint, I argue, is about avoiding that kind of massive strategic overreach that undermines long-term international security for everyone.
Okay, well that brings us directly to the core of it, doesn't it? Defining the dare, is this restraint driven primarily by the immediate measurable fear of Article 5 chaos? Or is it adherence to these higher strategic norms you're talking about?
I'm sorry, but I just don't quite buy that the proximity to NATO is the defining factor here. Look, if the location was the main constraint, the absolute deal breaker, why couldn't Ukraine, assuming they even had the capability, attempt something similar in international airspace or, non-NATO allied airspace? The fact is the restraint would still be enormous, wouldn't it? The real reason, I contend, is the target itself, a head of state's transport, and the systemic instability that such a high-profile political assassination carried out by military means would instantly create. It's a conceptual problem for international order, not just a logistical headache for border defense.
Okay, I see why you think that, but let me offer a slightly different perspective. I'm not ignoring the strategic norm argument at all. What I'm saying is, the clock on internal NATO politics is ticking much, much faster than the clock on international norms right now. That meeting with Trump in Hungary, it effectively weaponizes the location. Any military action there would immediately compromise the political unity of the alliance. Hungary, let's be honest, has historically been somewhat ambivalent. An incident on its soil would give Russia immediate, incredibly powerful leverage to exploit those internal NATO divisions, potentially leading to alliance fracturing. The whole geopolitical conundrum that's been identified, it really seems to highlight this precise convergence. High-value target meets highly sensitive, politically fragile geography.
But is that really a distinction with a difference in terms of the raw military escalation potential? The deliberate, execution of a head of state, regardless of whether they're leading a belligerent nation during transit. It's universally taboo among major powers for pretty clear existential reasons. If the US or China suddenly accepted this as a legitimate tactic, the entire structure of international travel, of diplomacy itself, would just collapse overnight. That fundamental risk, that's constant, regardless of the theater. Whether it's Budapest or Belgrade makes little difference to that core calculation.
Well, hold on. We have to distinguish between the universal taboo, which I grant is powerful, and the specific political danger inherent in this setting. I agree that taboo exists and is strong. But the unique danger here, it stems directly from Hungary's NATO status and the fact that the action would interrupt this high-profile diplomatic effort involving a major Western political figure. The political danger isn't just about Russian retaliation down the line, it's about immediate political chaos within the West itself. It forces NATO members into an impossible position, forcing them to choose sides on what amounts to a potential assassination, risking the very existence of the military bloc precisely when unity is absolutely paramount.
Fracturing? Are we sure about fracturing or just a very, very messy diplomatic fight? Show me the exact mechanism that makes this an immediate existential threat to the alliance, rather than just, a massive political embarrassment and diplomatic crisis. I appreciate the focus on the immediate political reality, I do. But that kind of strategic wisdom, focused only on the now, it completely misses the global long view. The core military calculation, I maintain, remains the profound danger of setting the precedent of assassinating a head of state via aircraft downing.
I'd frame it differently, though. The political fallout becomes the primary deterrent when your main strategic asset, the alliance itself, shows signs of fragility. The political damage caused by, say, exploiting Hungary's existing friction with Brussels over an assassination attempt occurring on its soil, that would be far more immediate, far more damaging to Western strategy, I think, than the longer-term erosion of a somewhat abstract norm. So the constraint is pragmatic, deeply pragmatic. Military opportunity in this case must be subservient to maintaining NATO cohesion and preventing that direct existential confrontation on alliance soil. We are simply unwilling to roll those dice.
I'm still not quite convinced by that line of reasoning, mainly because I think it underestimates the strategic cost, the long-term cost of effectively tearing up these definitional norms regarding leaders and diplomacy. The restraint we're seeing demonstrates a crucial unwritten rule, doesn't it? That even in wartime, certain figures, certain actions remain fundamentally off limits, precisely because of the potential for total systemic collapse. The failure to dare, as the question puts it, it's actually a strategic choice. It's a choice to preserve the possibility of managing this conflict, however ugly it currently is, rather than pushing it past the point of no return. You're talking about tearing up the strategic handbook and just throwing the pieces away. That leads to global chaos.
So to summarize my perspective, the inability or perhaps unwillingness to dare to shoot down Putin's aircraft in this very specific scenario, it confirms that managing the integrity of NATO and avoiding direct military engagement on its territory is the absolute overriding geopolitical imperative right now. That operational necessity defines the ultimate limits of risk exposure in this conflict.
And my summary, I suppose, is that the hesitation reflects a deeper, more structural understanding that some red lines, particularly those concerning the deliberate targeting of heads of state, even within a complex itinerary involving a NATO state and a prominent Western figure, simply cannot be crossed without triggering an irreversible and likely catastrophic change in the very nature of global conflict. It's the wisdom of self-restraint, exercised for the sake of future strategic stability.
The situation, it truly highlights that incredibly fine balance, doesn't it? The tension between potentially achieving a momentary strategic advantage and risking catastrophic, uncontrolled escalation right on the border.
Exactly. A tension that really forces strategists to weigh those immediate operational dangers against the potentially devastating long-term erosion of vital international norms. There is clearly much more to unpack regarding these complex geopolitical dynamics.